Hey y'all, Father Jim Haney from St. Paul's in the Plains in Lubbock and Texas Tech, Canterbury. Today, actually last week by the time you see this, today, April 4th, we're commemorating the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in Memphis, a very dark episode in our nation's history. But it was also part of a pretty bleak and dark year. 1968 was a very, very tough year in our nation's history, probably the toughest year we've had since the Civil War a century before that. 1968, I was still a small kid, but just a horrible, horrible time for us as a country. Deep divisions in our country. We had not only riots in the streets, riots during the Democratic Convention in Chicago, a deeply divisive election process that year. Lyndon Johnson bowing out of the race because of deep divisions over Vietnam. Vietnam, you had the Pueblo incident, you had the My Lai massacre, you had the Tet offensive. On top of that, you had the assassination of Dr. King, later the assassination of Bobby Kennedy as well. Just a horribly tough year. But there was one bright spot towards the end of the year, and you may recognize this famous photograph behind me here. Earthrise from the moon taken by the astronauts of Apollo 8 as they circumnavigated the moon. They didn't land on it. That would be Apollo 11 later the next year. But they did go around it, and they saw for the first time this perspective of the Earth as just a floating blue marble in space, the place of life in the middle of a vast ocean of coldness and darkness and emptiness. And the astronauts broadcast back to the Earth a very poignant reading of the first 10 chapters of the book of first 10 verses of the book of Genesis. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and they went on and read that creation story from Genesis. Jim Lovell was one of the astronauts. He was not the commander. He later would command Apollo 13 and get played by Tom Hanks in the movie version. But Jim Lovell said this. He said, when you see the Earth from the moon, you realize how fragile the Earth is and just how limited the resources are. And then he said, we're all astronauts on this spaceship Earth, about 6 or 7 billion of us, and we have to work and live together. That was an important reminder at the end of 1968. That's still an important reminder to us today in 2018, 50 years later. We are in the midst of great divisions in our country. We are in the midst of difficult times in our world. And yet we need to remember where we are and whose we are. We exist on the earth. The earth is God's creation. The heavens and the earth belong to God, not to us. We're temporary tenants on this spaceship Earth. And God calls us to live together with our billions of fellow human beings. We're called to live in harmony with the other members of our species on this Earth. And it is a reminder the Earth is a precious jewel in the midst of a very cold and dark universe. And it's a gift that we've been given. And we're called to celebrate that and to live with each other in harmony as best we can. And if we keep that first and foremost in the midst of tough times, yes, we have other decisions we have to make. We have other issues that are before us. But if we remember our common humanity on this spaceship Earth together as astronauts, as Jim Lovell said, on this spaceship, perhaps that will help us as we move forward as citizens of our world together. God bless and have a wonderful day.